going home empty-handed due to new punitive taxes. This is a story on page 4. Let's just take a look at that and, take a look at what this particular story is saying. And of course, our National Treasury Cabinet Secretary John Buddy will be summoned by Parliament to explain why his office has not acted on the illegal deductions in the pay slips to below the requisite one-third rule due to increased taxes. The Employment Act 2007 forbids employers from deducting more than two-thirds of the basic pay from an employee. Now, the law requires employees to take home at least a third of their basic salary as net salary, what remains after all deductions, including statutory deduction obligations, otherwise known as the one-third rule. Now, employers who make deductions that reduce an employee's salary to less than one-third are guilty of a criminal offense and are subject to penalties. The employer is also liable to refund any amount that was wrongfully withheld or deducted. The law also includes the two-thirds salary rule, which states that employers cannot deduct more than two-thirds of an employee's gross salary. This rule was created to help control how much debt workers can take on using their salaries. Of course, this is a story on page 4 of the People Daily. Another story making headlines is pain as another medical intern dies by suicide. A story on page 6. And also how DP residence has become a cash cow for Kenya Kwanza. This is a story on page 5. I want us to take a look at that because it will also be forming the basis of conversation this particular morning as we take a look at the direction of the nation. Now, MPs have demanded that they be provided with a breakdown of expenditure amounting to 12 billion spent by the Office of the Deputy President during the 2023-2024 financial year when impeached Rigathi Gachagua was in office. The MPs who sit in the Departmental Committee on Administration and Internal Security said they ought to know whether there was value for money for some of the projects that were initiated. The sentiments by the MPs came after documents tabled before them showed that of the 1.12 billion shillings, 717.7 million was spent in the office of the spouse of the Deputy President, 98.4 million on the refurbishment of building at Harambee Annex, and 249.8 million on refurbishing of building at current residence, while 49 million was spent on the refurbishment of buildings of the former Provincial Commissioner's office in Mombasa. This is a story on page 5 of the People Daily. Let's take a look at what the Standard is saying, and that is, will Raila bases cool hit from Mount Kenya? Now, facing rebellion in Mount Kenya after Rigathi Gachagua's impeachment, President William Ruto gave his strongest hint yet that he is ready for new allies, even as his central fight back plan met with resistance. Yesterday, Ruto, preaching unity, stormed Nyanza and showered Raila with praise for helping steady his ship. Another story making headlines on the Standard is litmus test as ODM goes to the polls. After several false starts, ODM faces a litmus test yet again as it conducts its grassroots elections in the face of internal wars and tension. In the National Front, MPs query 1 billion expenditure on Rigathi Gachagua. Now, members of Parliament demand a detailed account of how 1.12 billion was spent under the Deputy President's office during the tenure of embattled former DP Rigathi Gachagua. Fruits of Kenya's soft power over 60 years on show. That is on page 3 of the Standard, and this has to do with peacekeeping, global trade and impact of Nairobi's soft power are among the top achievements highlighted as Kenya celebrates 60 years of diplomacy. Now spearheaded by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Diaspora Affairs, the 10-day commemoration will showcase the country's success in advancing national interests on the global stage. Of course, this is a story on page 3 of the Standard. On matters world, Trump off the hook for now. This is a story on page 30 From the counties, we have Beacon's order for counties. This is a story on page 24. And also on Matter Sports, we have doping Kenya on the watch list. Now, this is a story on page 38. Let's take a look at what's happening on the Daily Nation and what you're waking up to. You're talking about Ruto says why Gachagua had to go. Now, giving the example of his former deputy, Mr. Rigathi Gachagua, who was recently impeached. The president yesterday said he will send home any members of his Kenya Kwanza government who propagate hate, division, and tribalism. Now, the head of state said all officials and leaders must preach unity and work for every Kenyan. This is a story on page 4 and 5. And of course, you can see President William Ruto there, of course, dancing and being welcomed in Kisumu, accompanied by, that is Anyang' Nyong'o, the governor of Kisumu. Something else that's making headlines on this particular newspaper is Raila pitches camp in West Africa as he campaigns for AUC top job. Now, Mr. Odinga continues to crisscross West Africa, where he yesterday held a meeting with Senegalese leader Bassirou Diomaye Faye. Now, we also have a story on page 17. Residents of City Estate suffer blow as court to case demolition for Sakaja housing project. And I was coerced to fix my father in defilement case, says woman. Now, for 17 years now, Daniel Wanyeki Gashoka has been in jail at Committee Maximum Security Prison on trumped-up charges of defiling his daughter. His daughter, who was only 7 when he was arrested on November 27, 2007, was coerced to give false testimony, leading to his conviction on 2 accounts of incest. Mr. Wanyeki was framed by his brother, his mother-in-law, and a police officer who threatened the little girl to testify that her father had repeatedly violated her. In 2020, the girl, then aged 20, reached out to her father and confessed how she was pressured to fix him. A story on page 2 and 3 of the Daily Nation. Now, another story here. Bank sues Joho over 54 million loan arrears. A local bank has sued Mining Cabinet Secretary Hassan Joho as it seeks to recover 54.5 million loan arrears. Now, SBM Bank Kenya Limited says Mr. Joho operated a loan account with it and was the beneficiary of a facility advanced by Chess Bank Kenya Limited. SBM Bank, which acquired 75% of Chess Bank almost 6 years ago, says that on or about January 3rd, 2014, Joho took a 40 million loan under Islamic Bank principles. This is a story on page 3 of this Daily Nation. And I want us to start making sense of the headlines this particular morning. And of course, joining me here is Dr. Hassan. Thank you so much for making time.
Very much.
And of course, Honorable Samuel Pugisho, thank you so much for coming.
Good morning.
Good morning to you. And of course, Member of Parliament Kachiliba Lote, thank you so much for coming this morning. I want us to start with Daily Nation here. Says the Raila pitches camp in West Africa as he campaigns for AUC top job. And now Mr. Odinga continues to crisscross West Africa, where he yesterday held a meeting with a Senegalese leader. Let me start with you, Dr. Hassan. We've been on this campaign trail trying to woo different parts of the continent to see whether we are edging closer to actually becoming, the AUC chairperson. And I don't... there's been different, arguments, and as far as this particular race is concerned, a nation divided. You've ever seen a nation divided when it comes to Matters International Fund? But we have a nation divided to some extent when it comes to the support base down here. Some people supporting this, some people do not support the Raila Odinga AUC bid. But he's put up a spirited fight when it comes to campaigning for this particular seat. Are we on the right track for him to clinch the top seats?
Good morning, everybody. I think it always gives us a clue of where we are heading to when it comes to issues of diplomacy and things that are outside our borders. But when you look at critically what we are doing, let's reflect it on how the other time when Kalonzo Musyoka was given an opportunity to do chattel diplomacy in regards to Amina Mohamed's bid for the same position. And at that particular time, we spent a lot of money as a government, and we campaigned across all African nations. However, we didn't succeed. The arithmetics of what happens in regional positions mainly focuses on the interest of other nations within the region. And when you look at the issues at the moment with Raila Amolo Odinga and the Djibouti core competitor, I mean, people are looking at what balances are there in terms of achieving a maximum vote collections within the region. So we see Kenya concentrating on West Africa. But do you also look at the arithmetics of, one, your colonial masters versus the influence of your colonial masters in that particular post? For example, Djibouti is influenced by France, and Afros, what do you call Franco-speaking nations are more than actually English-speaking nations. When you look at it keenly, if we remove those ones which have been eliminated because they have been removed from voting, there are around 6 nations that have been removed from voting. So if we don't achieve the calculation that people look at in terms of what benefits will your colonial master gain and how influential are they in the process, then we may not achieve much. But again, the first point is we want to see whether the person who is going to win actually, we want to see the person in the first round making at least significant, collecting significant number of votes, even if he doesn't win automatically by the majority. But the second round, things changes. That is where corruption occurs. That is where money is so you say hand changes.
You might be supported in the first round, but in the second round,
in the second round, it might be very tricky. Again, it depends on who wants to give out what and how much and what interests do the countries have together. Sometimes you will be influenced by the fact that your neighboring nation, you have certain agreement. Like East African community, well, the moment you say East African community, we have a common factor that pulls us together. So if that common factor that pulls us together does not bring us to one pool, then means then you have been broken. Like the way now the mountain has been broken in Kenya, for example. You see central Kenya has been isolated, whereas the upper part of the northern Mount Kenya region has been absorbed by the government. So I think it will going to play a very great role. But let's see how that thing will go to, how event unfold. And we are not very far from the election. Recently I was in Addis, and I found a diplomat from Djibouti in the hotel I was staying in, and we had a conversation. And the discussion currently going on over there is Kenya is not an issue for them.
What's the issue?
The issue is that they may secure the seat, but are there other external factors that will going to push them in terms of the changes in the US leadership now, in terms of the changes in UK? You know, these are the things they are saying. If those do not influence specific side, of which they will never live out to without influencing, then they think they will going to scoop the seat without even much
so what they think is that external influence might actually play, you know, a big role when it comes to influencing who becomes AUC chair.
Yes.
Okay. Let me come to you, Honorable Titles. What do you make of this campaign at the moment, in that some of the strides that have already been made, and just some of the arguments that is actually putting that out, that you know, they might be external influence, considering the fact that the person that is actually vying for this particular seat, coming from Kenya, has been very categorical when it comes to stating that you know, the Western, you know, superpowers should not actually, you know, get to interfere with the internal affairs of the African continent to some extent. Is that do you hold the same view?
Good morning, and thank you, viewers. First of all, I take this privilege to opportunity to appreciate the fact that I'm sitting with my senior here.
Yeah.
Mheshimiwa Pogisho was the first member of parliament.
And you took over his seat.
Yeah, and it's a big, big privilege to sit with him.
Okay.
He's also a very good statesman in this country.
All right.
I think he's given a lot of insights. We can give a lot of insights still to many of the things that goes on in this country. That being said, I think the first thing that I'll say is that we need to appreciate the fact that we've got a candidate for the first time vying for this very top position in the AU. And we all need, as a country, to do all our weight to support the former Prime Minister.
Okay, I think I want us to fix your mic first.
My mic is not working.
Yeah. There seems to be an issue with that. Let me come to you, Honorable Pogisho. Raila Odinga heading to the AUC right now, putting up very spirited fight when it comes to campaign. And, there's an argument that has been made here by Dr. Isaac Hassan. In terms of where exactly we should be putting our focus and what role will these different actually nations in terms of the language that they actually speak play when it comes to influencing his campaign for the AUC?
Well, thank you and good morning. First of all, this is actually the first time. We tried before, but this is the first time we are showcasing a candidate of Raila Odinga's stature, former Prime Minister, senior politician, presidential candidate. We've done it with Amina Mohammed and others, but we've never succeeded. We tried even with the World Trade Organization. We've tried with this. Kenya has never been good at winning these positions, partly because we are so divided. We're usually so divided and our interests are so funny, it's true, we're so funny. We only, if it's not my tribe, it's not my party, it's not this. We don't think about the nation and how important it is to secure important regional or even international assignments. So this is the first time, and for the first time I've also seen how committed we are as a country to fund Raila Odinga.
What would you say is, internal, what role do internal conflicts, because at times what you've mentioned is something that we normally do not look at when you actually, get to these particular continental stages. What would you say is the role of internal conflicts in terms of just divisions play when it comes to what we get to gain as a nation outside?
You never get very far if you are divided yourselves. Look at the countries that actually put in. Look at Chad, for example. A country like Chad. How did Chad succeed in putting a chairmanship? Chad is not even geographically significant as Kenya is. Chad is poorer than Kenya, but we have issues ourselves. We never commit. By the way, we have this is a regional problem. We have an issue. I want us to realize that if Raila Odinga doesn't succeed in this matter, this is it. Now, unless we put a former president or a president in power, this is the closest.
Meaning we are never going for it again?
No, we will go for it, but I don't think we can succeed because our politics in Kenya are bent on destroying our chances. We destroy our own chances. Let me come back to the issue of West Africa, for example, where Raila is camping. Why is he camping in West Africa? Because West Africa a lot of West Africa is Francophone, right? There's a lot of Francophone. This guy from Djibouti is Francophone. So he has to go and try and convince Francophone countries like Senegal and Guinea and all those countries to give him the votes. Okay? So we want to say, okay, East Africa has accepted generally. We have to deal with COMESA, deal with Great Lakes region, deal with Northern Africa and all those countries. I really wish that we can begin to think as Kenya of winning, not as individuals, but winning as a nation. As a nation,
Honorable Lotey, what would this mean for the country, if at all? Because I think sometimes if the division that we are talking about here comes from not understanding what it means for the country to have someone from Kenya actually head, the AUC.
Well, I hope my mic is okay now.
I believe so.
I can be able to
We are good. I believe we are good.
What I'll really say is that we're going to get 3 wins, and especially for the government, if Raila wins the seat. The first is a win for Raila himself, because Raila has really fought for this country for a long period of time, and Raila needs to be awarded and rewarded to be able to sit in an African position. Already, he's been heading the infrastructure in Africa, and we've actually seen him transform his transformative ideas to work in countries such as DRC and also in Kenya here. So I think as an individual, Raila will win and Kenyans will win, because if a Kenyan is able to transform the infrastructure of this country, the infrastructure of this region, it basically means that Kenyans have the capacity to do that. 2 is a win for the government, because as we know, Raila is middle politically. And a lot of people, if you go to the streets, a lot of people who are not supporting Raila want Raila to not get, so that Raila comes and be able to disturb the government. That is something that is out there. Because they say if Raila does not win, then Raila is going to be active politically. I might not support the government.
Okay, so is that a possibility though?
No, so it's actually, those are things that are said. But you know, every fire has got a smoke. And so when the smoke is coming out like this, it basically means that those who believe that Raila will become active politically if he does not win in this seat. And so Raila wins for this political seat. So for this AU seat will basically mean that the government will settle and know that one of their own, I would say one of their own as per now, because that is where the coalition is already settled. And so there is not going to be turmoils from the Raila camp. And the last one is a win for Kenya. Because we've never had a regional institution such as the AU being held by Kenyans. And like my senior said, if you look at Kenya, we are geopolitically very strategic. Geopolitically strong enough to get this position, but we have never. So that countries such as Chad, countries such as Central African Republic, those countries that are not even connected, you do not even know how they survive. But they're able to take this position. So I will actually say it is important that we actually pitch for Raila to win, so that we have a stable country, so that we have a stable representation, so that we have, for the first time, a Kenyan holding this position. The problem is, when we actually have our own, even within the East African community, like for example, Somalia said they're not going to support Raila. That is where the problems start to come from. And yet we believe that we are coming from the same East African region.
But are we trying to say, Mheshimiwa, are we trying to say that we pick our problem from the nation and move it to another place so that Kenya becomes stable? So are we trying to say that Raila is a problem?
No, Raila is not our problem. Raila is our son. And the reason why we also want him to be able to take an ascent to a higher position in the region.
We want to place him at least an election that he once in his lifetime that he has won. I think that's what we are looking at.
Not really. We want him to be able to showcase what Kenyans can offer.
All right, let me take a break here on the program. Of course, we continue the conversation, taking a look at the direction of the nation. When we come back, we'll be finalizing on the issue of Raila Odinga's AUC, and also how that then translates to what we've been able to experience in Nyanza and what this means for the country when it comes to the future of the politics of this country. What's next after this particular, the impeachment of Rigathi Gachagua, Mount Kenya region that seems to have gone already, and now we see to a new alliance or a new kind of base that is forming towards President William Ruto. We take a break. We'll be back in a few.
Mr. DJ
Lucky. When it comes to playing the best music videos, we've got you covered. K24 TV Mix Master. When it comes to a lineup of all the fresh DJs, we've got that too. Yeah! Check this out. Caribbean.
Controversy starts from the teacher return.